Well, good day, everybody. Welcome to the Bible in the year 2021 on day 24. Day 24, and we're looking at Genesis 35 to 37. And I hope I'm not the only one who's seeing Jacob in a different light. But we're going to get right into this because we know that time is precious, and I don't want to take too much away from you today because I'm sure you have a busy day, or you had a busy day, and you just want to get to bed. So here we're looking at Genesis 35, um, verses 3 to 4. And I'm just going to make sure that everything is rolling here. Yeah, okay, so it looks all good. Genesis 3 to 4. And what we're looking at here is revival, renewal, and honor. So Jacob's boys have gone in, they've done a terrible deed. They wiped out a village, um, unsuspecting. They were treacherous, deceiving, killed all the men, took the women and children, all the riches. And God says, I think it's time for some renewal here. I think it's time for some revival in this family. And he tells Jacob, go build me an altar and let's get this done. And so we find Jacob comes into agreement with the Creator on this, and yeah, my family needs something here. And we read in verses 3 to 4. Then let's rise and go up to Bethel, so that I can build an altar there to the God who answered me when I was in trouble, and who has been with me wherever I've gone. That's the promises that God gave to him. He boils them down to two here. Um, but he says, listen, this is the God I worship. The reason I worship him is because he was he was with me in trouble. He rescued me. He protected me. You guys are here because of him. Um, and he's been with me wherever I've gone. He's made me who I am today. So let's go and worship him. And so in this renewal, it means that this family is choosing um, the Creator, God, the nameless one at this point, as their God. So they gave Jacob all of the foreign gods they had. So it says here. So they gave Jacob all of the foreign gods they had, as well as the rings in their ears, and Jacob buried them under the terebinth at Shechem. So he buries their past. Their past is buried. It's very symbolic. It is buried. The old gods are just dead. They have nothing to do with them. It's good, isn't it? This is what revival looks like. So, and then we read this, and I found it for me, just because I know what's coming, and you do too. There was some foreshadowing here. When they set out, God made all of the surrounding cities fearful, so they didn't pursue Jacob's sons. You notice that? Didn't pursue Jacob's sons because the sons were to blame here. So this family could have been wiped out, except that once again, we find that God has intervened to carry his plan forward. He rescues his family to carry the plan forward. And he does the same thing for Israel when he calls Israel out. He made the surrounding nations fearful of Israel. Maybe it's unfounded. They were fearful of a pipsqueak group that had yet even really formed into a nation. They were just a family group, and he made them fearful to protect them. He made those nations fearful to protect them, and that's what I see. So there's some methodology that he uses that he repeats, not all the time. He likes to do things different all the time, but there are certain things that he repeats, and this I see repeated. So then in verse 9, we have yet another appearance. He's gone. He's done. He's built this altar of worship. They have worshipped. They're coming away, and then suddenly God appeared to Jacob again while he was on his way back from Paddan Aram, and blessed him. God said to him, "Your name is Jacob, but your name will be Jacob no longer. But he's already done this. He's already renamed it. The angel had already named, because of the wrestling incident, because he refused to let go. He named him. No, no, your name will be Israel, and Israel means one who wrestles with God. That's what it means, one who wrestles with God. And he named him Israel. And I've read some books by rabbis and some Jewish authors to gain some perspective on how they see the relationship with Yahweh, and they see themselves as a nation. Get this, who keeps Yahweh to account, um, and they wrestle with him. They argue with him, and that's where they see themselves almost in like a opposition to, and they refine him and they make him a better god because of it. This is what came across in the books that I read, at least. So this whole persona of one who wrestles with God. Can I just tell you, Rachel was not a nice person. Okay, she's about to die here. They've been traveling around. Um, she's giving birth to the last of the kids, and she's dying in the process. Not pleasant, not nice. It's very sad because this is the one that Jacob fell in love with, and she's dying here. And it says, as her life faded away, just before she died, she named him Ben Oni. Now you got to understand, when this child grows up, they're going to know that their birth resulted in their mother's death. Okay, Ben Oni will grow up with that already, feeling the weight of that. But his mother turns around and calls him child of my suffering. Can you imagine? Uh, is child of my suffering in class today? Present? Okay. Um, yes, at the doctor's office. Child of my suffering, you're next. All of his life, he would be reminded that this is who he. Oh, that is not a nice mom. I don't care. That is just not a nice person to put that on a child with everything else that we've seen that she's been involved with, that she's did, the liar, the deceiver, and so on, that she is. And then she goes and does this. Okay, it's a bummer that she's dying. Okay, it's a bummer that she's dying in childbirth. Granted, I feel for Jacob. He's losing the love of his life. But thankfully, Benjamin had a good dad, and the dad stepped in and said, no, no son of mine will be walking around with that name. And he called him Benjamin, which is my son, my right arm, my right arm, son of my right arm. Is So he goes from a weak name, a suffering name, to a name of strength. Oh, just be thankful, thankful for Jacob, for just, yeah, for Benjamin, just feeling that for Benjamin. And I'm wondering, because of some of the things that tribe ended up going through, if not, just the weight of their mother's death, um, carried through. But could you imagine if that tribe had been called son of my suffering? Could you imagine? Hey, tribe, son of my suffering. Just, yeah. Why do people do this to their kids? Okay, Genesis chapter 35, verse 22. Jacob was not a rash man. Jacob was a patient man. We can see that. He was too patient at times, understanding. Um, and now his oldest son, Reuben, turns around and sleeps with his concubine, sleeps with his secondary wife. I mean, that's just wrong. That's just wrong. It's the eldest son who is too big for his britches, who is trying to be the dad, in a very terrible way. But Jacob didn't act like an Esau would have, or a Laban would have, or a Rachel would have. But he remembers. He remembers. And we're going to look at this. We're going to remember this later on down the road. But we see here, while Israel stayed in that place, Reuben went and slept with Bilhah, his father's secondary wife, and Israel heard about it. So he heard about it. He didn't react right away, but he remembered. Um, and I'll bring that to your attention when we come across the consequences that come out of that. Verse 27 now. Um, Listen, I'm astounded at this. Okay, maybe you've read this and just went right by and didn't give much thought to it. But Jacob, look at verse 20. So Jacob came to his father Isaac. He came to his father Isaac at Mamre, that is Kiriath Arba. This is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac lived as immigrants. Okay, his dad's still alive. What happened 20 plus years ago? Do you remember Jacob, Esau, the blessing? His dad's blind, he can't see anymore. He he's like half dead and he wants to bless Esau before he dies. And 20 plus years later, he's still around. He's still there. He lived like I think it was 185. You can correct me on that. It was either 180, 185. I believe it was 185 years. He lived 185 years. Um, so what was the blessing all about? Was that just because he thought he was going to die and he actually lived for 20 years longer than he thought he would, or is it because of the age of his children? I don't know, but he, he was still alive, and Isaac was Jacob was back in time to bury his dad with his brother. So 36, we're not going to deal with it. Okay, you read down through it, but it's very interesting. I just want to highlight this. So we're given the details of Esau's descendants, and they became the people or the nation of Edom. Now, I want you to remember that name. Wherever you do these studies in your Bible, whatever, set it aside. Some of you know what I'm getting at. There's certain nations that Israel is going to encounter. I want you to remember where they were descended from. Edom is one of them. The Amalekites are another. So I just hold on to these names because we're going to look at this when we see Israel traveling in the desert and approaching the promised land. We're going to see how this plays out. So then on to Genesis 37. It's really only a couple of verses, maybe 3 verses I want to touch on here, but I just want to do the summary with you. You got to understand that what we're seeing happening now, that these are now the roots of establishing Israel, the nation of Israel. Okay, it's from these boys, from these men, that the tribes are going to come, and this nation is going to form. And they are for the purpose of revealing the Creator. That's what the Creator is doing here. He is forming himself a nation that he will glorify himself through them and reveal himself to all other nations, because people are worshiping a Creator that they do not know, and they're attaching other names to him, and they're carving images, and they're calling him by other gods, and what we do is we project ourselves onto anything that we create. So these other gods are now, they are actually not the Creator. Okay, you can't even say, well, was the Creator by a different name? No, they're moving away from that because they're now projecting themselves onto these gods, onto these idols who are vengeful and hurtful and hateful and all this sort of stuff. So God now wants to reveal himself because he wants people to know about him, and what he considers good and what he considers bad, and righteous, and all that sort of stuff. So that's what he wants to do. Now we see in these events what's happening, the fulfilling of the prophecy that was given to Abraham. If you remember back, God told him to look at the stars, and he told him what was going to happen, and he told him that his descendants would go down into Egypt, and they would be in captivity for 4 generations, is what he told them. Thing is, this time in Egypt, okay, it's going to stunt, it's going to hold back, it's going to stop them from developing into a nation. They are just going to be a family group. They are going to become slaves, and not appreciated. And when you're treated like a slave, you don't get the opportunity to develop like you do when you have that freedom. Um, and it's going to be all about survival. So for 4 generations, they're going to be stunted. And while this is happening, uh, the family groupings like the Edomites, like we're just talking about, the descendant of Esau, and the Ishmaelites and all these others. They're developing into nations. They're growing. They're having kings. Well, you just read through the previous chapter, the various kings that the Edomites had, and so on. And Israel doesn't even have a leader, not even a leader, because they're slaves and they're just trying to survive. They have some elders. They've developed this elders thing, and we'll see that when we get to Moses. Um, but this was all necessary. It's all part of the plan. It's necessary, first of all, because the nations that God once removed, um, they haven't used their last opportunities yet. It's still not too late for them. They haven't committed every wicked thing that they could possibly do. God has to wait until they have done the last wicked thing that they could do, and then that's it. The jar of wickedness is full, and it's time for his judgment. And he already knows that's going to be not going to happen till the fourth generation of Israel. And so while he is removing these, he's also going to use Israel to reveal himself. So this is all part of this plan. um, Now, could we consider Job a foreshadow here? Where he allows those he loves to go through difficulties in order that he can be revealed, in order that he can be glorified, in order that people would understand him more. Um, yeah, can we be in such a relationship that we want to bring honor to our Father, just like Jesus did when he went to the cross? See, it's all part of that. That's hard, isn't it? Because we'd rather have a dad who'd rather spoil us, and but this is the Creator. This is the Creator Father, and he still wants to reveal himself to the world. He's still trying to do that. And so, will he allow us, his children, to go through difficult times in order for him to be revealed? Yeah, yeah, he will, because our reward is yet to come. I mean, we have lots here, and we have life in abundance here. Um, but good times are going to roll when it's time to go home. Okay, so just looking at the few verses I wanted to look here, we Genesis 37, verses 18 to 20, and none of this surprises us. Look at this. It's the way that the brothers, Joseph is being positioned. We know that he's Israel has to be welcomed at first coming in. There's an honoring. God is positioning them, but there's also other things going on here, and so what we have is more of the character of these guys is being revealed. We're seeing more of who they are, and they're not nice. They're terrible. We saw it in the whole thing of how they dealt with Dinah, and we see it here how they deal with their brother Joseph. These guys just aren't nice guys. And so we read they saw Joseph in the distance before he got close to them, and they plotted to kill him. The brothers said to each other, "Here comes the big dreamer. Come on now, let's kill him. Let's kill him." Yeah, let's say it again. Let's kill him and throw him into one of the cisterns, and we'll have and we'll say a wild animal devoured him. Then we will see what becomes of his dreams. Yeah, like, do you see it? We got hate or anger, as Jesus would put it. We got anger. We got murder. We've got deception. Yeah, there's not nice. Um, but what God's about to do through all of these circumstances, through all the things that He's going to about to move them through, He's got to bring them through a period of time of correction. He has to bring out this ugliness. He has to reveal this ugliness. Then He's going to bring them into a place of humility and correction, and He's going to bring them into a place of maturity, because these have to be the tribal leaders. I mean, they are giving birth to tribes here, and and they have to have the maturity as the leaders, and so he's revealing their hearts. He's revealing stuff here, and then he's going to use Joseph to move them into a place of humility, and not because he became the leader, but because they stew for a very long time. They have to watch their father in all of his. He became a broken man, and they realize by their actions what they've done, and some compassion is born in them, and they really honestly regret what they did to Joseph. But we'll look at that when we get to it. So I don't want to get too far ahead on that. Verse 25, I just wanted to point out here. Did you notice the caravan? Yeah, I like these little things. Um, so when they decided that they'd rather make money off of getting rid of Joseph instead of killing him, um, they decided to sell him. And look what it has here. When they sat down to eat, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites. Wow, imagine that. Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with camels carrying sweet resin, medicinal resin, the fragrant resin on their way down to Egypt. Hmm. Remember the Ishmaelites? Who do they come from? Ishmael, the brother of Isaac. So Joseph was actually purchased by family. He was actually sold by his brothers, sold to other relatives. Yeah, interesting. Um, and I forgot to change the title there again. Sorry. Just to finish off here, though, in 36, this whole thing was a setup. That's what you need to understand here. So we get to the very last verse, and it says, when the Midianites had sold Joseph to the Egyptians, to Potiphar, meanwhile, the Midianites had sold Joseph to the Egyptians, to Potiphar, Pharaoh's chief officer, commander of the royal guard. It could have been to anybody. It could have been to the baker in town. It could have been to no, but no. What does he do? He gets them into position. God moves them into position. He's still going to take them through some stuff here, some very humbling situations. He's going to take him through, and to Joseph's credit, he is still going to operate in the heart that God has given to him. But at the same time, um, he's arranging it for him to stand before Pharaoh. Yeah. God gets us to where he wants us, one way or another. And sometimes we have to go through the sewage before we reach the palaces. So there you go. Another day, guys. It's all yours. And yeah, it's great, isn't it? All the stuff we're discovering about Yahweh. So you guys have a great day. Be blessed, be encouraged. Don't forget, you do not live in the Old Testament. We are under the new covenant, and we serve our Lord Jesus Christ, who is always with us. And we know him so much better than what these guys knew, the Creator. Thank you for being on this journey, and have a blessed day.